Hi everyone and welcome to Gracegate Church Online. Thank you so much for joining us today. You are joining with Maple and Zalia. We're glad to have you guys here. Hope you've had a great week, even in lockdown here in New Zealand. Over this past week, I have had the opportunity to interview one of my good friends called Gavin, and he's sharing with us a story about his middle season. And so come and check it out with me, and we hope you enjoy the program, and we look forward to catching up with you later. Bye! Hey Gavin, welcome to our interview today. Thanks for your time. So we would love to know a little bit more about you and your story. So before we get into it, you just want to introduce yourself, tell us about you, tell us about your life.
Yeah, so I'm Gavin, for those who don't know me. I have a lovely wife named Emily. Both of us spent quite a few years in Australia, but we've both recently moved back here. I like to ride motorcycles in my spare time. And the other thing is I'm right into like self-development. I love teaching myself new stuff. So bury myself in a book or even an audio book. And at the moment, I'm currently self-employed as a business consultant.
Very nice. So that goes well with the self-growth and discovering and stuff then.
Yeah.
Well, that is very cool. And so we're in the series at the moment called The Middle, as you know. And I'd just love it if you could share with us a season in your own life where you experienced yourself in the middle of a situation where you actually found a bit hopeless, or just middle of a situation where you felt like you were just stuck or trapped in.
Yeah, so the most significant thing that stands out for me is I actually went through addiction in Australia, and kind of found myself at this place where I was like really at rock bottom. And I'd been charged with drug trafficking from the police, and my whole life was kind of falling down all around me. And at the time, I'd kind of really attached myself to what I did for a living. I was a finance broker, and I thought that when that all came tumbling down, that I'd really lost myself. So through all of that, I kind of had this court case looming over me, and this big charge where I was probably going to be deported, looking at serious jail time. And it was really scary, to be honest. Like I just felt like within a 6-month period, my life had gone from hugely, well, what the world would consider as being successful, I guess, to having to put my house on the market and just to afford some legal fees to prepare for a Supreme Court hearing, where at the time they'd put me on bail for 2 years, and I couldn't leave the country, but I couldn't work either. So I'd gone through this unfair dismissal case, and it was the only place I'd worked for, so they wouldn't give me a reference. And my current financial commitments meant that I needed to achieve a certain level of job, and to get back into that industry, I really needed to get a reference. So my lawyer said to me, like, hey, you're looking at big time. You need to put yourself into rehab to help mitigate what you're looking at, get your sentence reduced. And I was like, oh, really? How long? And he's like, you've got to do at least 12 months. And I was like, whoa. So he wanted me to go live in this rehab for 12 months. And me being me at the time, I just thought I could all do it by myself, didn't need anyone. And so I tried that a few times and just kept kind of stumbling. I'd maybe get like 2 weeks clean time up. And during that time, I'd be calling rehab saying, hey, I want to get in. I need to get in. I've got this court case coming up. And they weren't letting me in because I'd been clean for 2 weeks, and they wanted. So it was like this really weird paradox. And my mum, she's actually always been a Christian. To be honest, at the time, she just kind of Bible bashed me. So I was like, what are you doing to me? She's like, oh, I've heard of this place in the Gold Coast that they might be able to take you in. And so I said, well, I needed to do it. So I went along and they accepted me that day and said I could come in the following day. Turns out it was a Christian discipleship.
Go, mum.
Yeah. So, but it was a rehab as well.
Yeah.
Ironically, happened to, cause there is a silver lining to the story. I met Emily, who was the general manager. That's my now wife, of the rehab.
Yeah.
So, but I spent 12 months there, in what I could only describe as the most prickliest, a true wilderness, where it was soul searching, horrible time. Actually, like I learned so much. It was so refining for me. God was just trimming off all of these bad behaviors, really making me like look inward and say, where do, like just reattaching my head and my heart again, because they were so detached. Like I was so detached from anything that was emotional. And so, yeah, I mean, I ended up going to jail for 4 months. It was actually amazing that I only got 4 months. To be fair, they took 20 months off my sentence because of every day I'd spent in the rehab.
So was that after your 12 months in rehab, then you went and did your sentence?
I did 10 months in rehab because I put it off for 2 months because I was like, I really didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
So they took 2 days off for every day I was in. So they took 20 months off my sentence. So instead of doing 2 years, I only served 4 months. But that whole kind of transformation period, I ended up going to jail, and I had this little Bible study group that I created.
Wow.
And it was like the most toughest, strongest guys in jail too. Like they were Kiwis, but it was in Australia. And so every morning we'd go out into the courtyard and we'd read our Bible and pray for each other. And all of these people kind of piqued this curiosity.
Yeah.
It was really interesting. So I look back on that now and know that was as traumatic as it was. Like I reaped so much from it now. Like I had my wife, I now am attached to my feelings and emotions, and Jesus is at the center of my life. So, and with that, I feel so liberated.
That's amazing. That is such a hectic story right there.
That's the condensed version.
Oh, man, I would love to sit and hear the rest sometime. I just want to know, when you, like, that's such a lot of things to go wrong at one time, and just to feel your whole life just pulled out from under you. So how did you keep moving forward? How did you keep yourself moving forward when you were stuck in that middle time? How did you not just throw in the towel?
Well, I'd learned about spiritual warfare. And so one of the biggest things for me, I mean, there's different types of spiritual warfare, but worship was huge for me. Music had always been in my blood, but there was a rule at this rehab that you weren't allowed to listen to worldly music. So all I had is this worship, but I used to go and just spend time with God and just pour my heart out and just, I guess, just lay it down. Everything that was kind of burdening me, I'd just hand it all over to him and walk away going, I'm not in control of the situation. I had no idea when I was going to jail, for how long. All of these things that were just kind of like playing out of my life that I just had to sit in and go through. And just trust that God was going to do a work in me through that period, and that gave me hope. Otherwise, I mean, I probably who knows where I would have been. Nowhere good.
And I mean, what else did he have at that time? That's amazing, because so many people, instead of just handing it over to God, actually try and grab it all and control it themselves. So
I tried. You
tried it first, but you found out.
No. I quickly learned that I actually wasn't in control, and to kind of hand over that control, it was difficult, but once it happened, like, it was so liberating is the best way I could explain it. Like, my anxiety dropped, like I just felt more freedom. I was able to just be appreciative of the smaller things in life again. So I wouldn't have it any other way now.
That's awesome. Well, the other week in one of the first messages in our middle series, we shared a quote from Charlotte Gamble, and I'll read it. It says, how well we handle the middle reveals what's in the middle of us. So when did you think that you learned, that you realized, you said before, that Christ was actually at the center of you, and that helped you handle that situation you were in? So when did you realize that it was actually Christ that helped you in that situation?
I guess I kind of had all of these little signs along the way that were just kind of reassuring and just confirming that my, I guess, newfound faith and belief. It was prayers were being answered, and so like I can't really pinpoint a specific time. It was like it slowly got built upon. And I mean, because at first I was like, I kind of gave into it. I was like, I've got nothing else to try. Why not? And so I did it, and I was like, well, if it works, great. And then I started seeing these prayers getting answered, and like this kind of inner working happening in me, where I could see, I guess, I call it now the process of sanctification. But at the time I was like, wow, like I'm actually changing. I didn't think I could. And so that kind of built more and more faith that just by stepping into Christ and allowing him to work through me and kind of dwell in me. That I look back at it now and it was just kind of this step-by-step process. So to pinpoint a time would be really difficult.
Yeah, but that's so cool, because God was just laying a foundation, and like you said, when you look back now, it's just, you can see him in so many little signs and so many little things, which is amazing.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
Super cool. Yeah.
So my last question I have for you, we're keeping this brief, but man, you could share a whole lot about just your story. So go and chat to Gavin later if you guys want to know. But I just want to know, so you're obviously out of that middle season that you're sharing at the moment, but we all go through seasons again and again in middle seasons. So what is your piece of advice to somebody who's currently feeling like they're just stuck in the middle season in their life and they're just seeing no hope in the void? What is your advice to them?
Oh, look, I've got to say, you just have to embrace it. Embrace it, push into God, lean onto him, and just say, the more, in your weakness, he is strong. So to kind of just succumb to that and go, wow, this is what I'm going through at the moment. I really need you in my life right now. He can really work miracles in those moments. So just hold on to that, and it'll give you hope. It'll help you feel happy in a time where you probably shouldn't. People will be going, wow, what is it that's inside of you? You're going through this quite traumatic or horrible time, and you just seem to have this optimistic view, and it's quite contagious. I would just say, that's what I'd say.
No, that's great advice. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Gavin, for sharing your story with us. And it is really inspiring. All those things you went through, so many people would have just given up instead of turning to God in it. And now your faith's just growing in a huge way, and you're inspiring other people. So I'm excited to see what's next. But thanks for sharing with us.
Cool. Thanks.
It's so encouraging to hear your story, Gav, and thanks for sharing with us. All of us can relate to this middle series, and it's so encouraging to hear a story of someone who's, made some unwise choices in their life and had struggles, but found hope in Jesus and found life and found meaning and discovering faith in Jesus. And we're so encouraged by your story today, Gav. And I really love the way Gavin ended his story, because he shared this point of when he's weak, then he's strong. And today I want to speak a bit more about what it looks like to be weak and also to be strong at the exact same time. So this past week, I'm struggling to sleep at night, and I decide, I've tried everything, and I decide, hey, I'm going to go on YouTube and I'm going to see what's trending. And I look what's trending, and I come over a YouTube video from Mr. Beast. Now, if you don't know who Mr. Beast is a famous YouTuber who does some of the most engaging and I guess just fun videos on YouTube. Most of the time, he's just giving away thousands of dollars. He does some crazy videos where he literally goes into a supermarket and he buys the whole supermarket and donates all the food and everything in that supermarket to charity. And this video this past week that I'm looking at is a video that is titled, I bought a $800,000 private island, and whoever is last to leave this island is actually going to win it. So he has these 10 contestants. They come to the island, and he's explaining to them, hey, whoever survives and sort of lasts the longest on this island is actually going to win this $800,000 private island. And while he's still busy explaining this, straight away he says, hey, the last person to bring me a coconut and put it in this hole is going to be the first one to leave this island. And the 10 contestants just scramble, run and go and get a coconut. And unfortunately, there's this one guy who's lost. He misses out, and Mr. Beast says to him, hey, sorry, you're the first guy to leave the island. And while I was watching this, quite entertaining, and if you have time, and I mean only if you have free time, I'll encourage you to actually go and watch some of Mr. Beast's videos. But as I was watching this, it was pretty brutal. The way people were just getting voted out, or not even voted out, but just having to leave the island for really ridiculous challenges. Like the other one was, he said, hey, everyone go and hide and seek, and the first person that I find is going to leave the island. And one of them was also, he checked, hey, whoever isn't subscribed to my YouTube channel is actually going to leave the island. And he goes through everyone and makes sure that, hey, they subscribed, and if they weren't, they had to leave. And I was watching this, and I was like, man, this is just so unfair. Like, that's their one shot to get $800,000, a private island to win, and they're all just falling, which seemed to be like so unfair and so unjust. And I thought a bit about it, and I thought, hey, isn't this sometimes how faith looks for us? Like, isn't it sometimes that we look at faith and kind of think like, hey, if we're following God with all our heart and all our soul, that we won't experience any adversity, that nothing bad should happen to us, that we should never find ourselves in a middle season, that like, I mean, if we follow God with all our heart and with all our trust and with all our faith, that we should actually just own the island, like the island should be ours. But if you're new to faith, or you've been journeying with faith for a long time and understand what it means to follow Jesus, it never ever guarantees us that we won't go through middle seasons, that it never ever guarantees us that we won't face adversity in our lives. And sometimes it feels so unjust, and sometimes it feels so unfair and pretty ridiculous. Like, isn't this a loving God? And today I want to kind of encourage us by sharing some really bad news about our middle season, and then also trying to share with you some really good news about our middle season. Because today the story that I want to share with you is about a guy who we often speak about in church, and he's a guy who's wrote quite a lot of the New Testament. And in his story, we find that his middle season is actually something that isn't just a middle season, it's actually something that's permanent. It's something that's not ever going to change. And if you don't know who I'm talking about Paul, the Apostle Paul. He is one of the gladiators of the Christian faith. He is someone, if you think of faith and trust and connection with God, who is probably one of the greatest warriors. And yet it didn't begin that way for Paul. He grew up as a Jew, and he was always under this impression and understanding that there would be this coming Messiah. But actually, he was actually employed by the government to actually persecute and torment Christians. And at one point in his life, he actually has this conversion period where he actually becomes a Jesus follower. For the first time in his life, his whole understanding of the coming Messiah, who is this coming Messiah, he understands, and he sees that this coming Messiah is actually Jesus. And he decides to change his whole life around, and he becomes a fully devoted follower of Jesus. Now, one of the interesting things about Paul's journey is that as he begins this journey of faith, as he continues to share about who Jesus is and what Jesus has done in his life and transformed him, he finds himself in this middle season. And today I want to share it with you, and you can read along on the screen. But the story is sort of found in 2 Corinthians chapter 12. And I'm going to start reading from verse 7, where Paul's sort of sharing about this middle season. And this is what he says. He says, "Therefore, in order to keep me from becoming conceited, I was given." Yeah, Paul, he starts off this passage and he shares, hey, I want you to know that in other words, hey, there's some purpose behind something that has been given. He says, in order to keep me from becoming conceited, in order just to help everyone understand that I'm human, that I'm no one important, that actually I'm just trusting in God and God's going to use my story. He says, I was given. He was given, and this word here, given, is shared to us in a positive way. This isn't a negative given. This is something positive, as if like it's our birthday or it's Christmas. We're receiving this good gift. But then he says, hey, in order to keep me from becoming conceited, I was given a thorn in my flesh. A thorn, like, that's no gift, right? I mean, if you want to know what a gift is, like, a gift is not a thorn in the flesh. If you've ever been to Africa and walked in the African bush, you would know that just in a few minutes, if you got jandals on, you're going to have these massive big thorns through your jandals in your feet, and they're painful. It's not a pleasant feeling, and even if you get these small thorns in your fingers, they're painful, they're irritating. This isn't something that is a gift. And I love the language that Paul uses here. He says he was given this thorn in my flesh. And then he says, a messenger of Satan to torment me. Now, what I like about Paul as he's sharing this, he's pretty much sharing this thorn or this middle season, and he doesn't actually tell us what it is. Scholars have debated and thought that this is something that was actually physical wrong with him, that maybe he had a disease like epilepsy, that others actually say that, maybe it was malaria that he had as he was traveling from country to country. He got malaria, but it was something that wasn't going away. Some have said maybe it was a temptation that he suffered with. It wasn't a sin, but it was something that he was struggling with that was tormenting him. And others even say that this thorn in his flesh was, maybe it was his singleness, that Paul wasn't married, and that, this was his middle season. Maybe it was this messenger of Satan, and as some scholars would say, that these were his enemies. These were the people who were on his side, but then against him. We're not exactly sure what the messenger of Satan actually means here. Some say it could be a figure of speech. Others say, was it God actually using the enemy to bring goodness into Paul's life? But what we do know is that Paul clearly says that this thorn in my flesh was there to torment me. And when I think of torment, it's something that is painful, that is hard. that you fight with, that you wrestle with, that doesn't just go away, that is emotionally draining. And Paul then does what all of us would do, is he turns to God. And in verse 8 it says, 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord. I prayed and I begged the Lord that he would take this away from me. And I think when Paul's saying, 3 times, I don't just think he's meaning I sat down and prayed 3 times. But I think what Paul is saying is there were 3 seasons in his life where he was like, I can't handle this anymore. This is just so much bigger than I can bear. Please, Lord, just take it away from me. Now, all of us have experienced this in our lives. There isn't one of us, even if you're not a Jesus follower, and even if you don't believe in God, there's been a season in your life, or there will be a season in your life where you're being tormented and you're like, man, even if there is a God, just God, please, just take this away from me. Just take this away from me. And I think, often when we do say those prayers, we often don't get an answer. We ask God, we plead with him, we say, God, this is my middle, this is my thorn in my flesh. God, please just reveal and help me in this season, and we don't get an answer, which is really hard. Which is hard when God's silent. We're just wanting a sign, and maybe that will give us clarity. But actually God and Jesus actually answers him, and this is what he says in verse 9. He says, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Paul pleads with God about this thorn in his flesh, and then he says, he pleads with him, and then God says, my grace is sufficient for you. Sufficient, that actually, it will supply your every need. He says, for my power is made perfect in weakness. In other words, what God is saying here, and what's so interesting to me, is that Paul's pleading for this middle season, and God answers him, and pretty much he says, no, I'm not going to take this pain away. I'm not going to take this humiliating season away from you. I'm not going to take this debilitating season away from you. Actually, Paul, this is permanent. But he gives him a solution and an answer, and he says, hey, but understand who I am. Understand that my grace, my free gift, my grace is sufficient for you. And he says, my power is made perfect in weakness. In other words, Paul, if you really want to experience my power, it's through the thorn in your flesh. It's through your middle season that you will only get to see my full power. And then Paul responds, and I think only Paul can respond in this way. But this is where the good news is, where he encourages us as Jesus followers to respond in this way with our difficult seasons, our middle seasons, our thorn in our flesh. He says, therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. Paul uses the word boast. If there's anything that I don't want to boast about, it's my weaknesses. It's my struggles. It's the things that are difficult. It's the hardships. But Paul says, I'm boasting all the more gladly. I'm marinating myself in these difficult seasons. I want people to actually see them, because it's in these weaknesses that I can truly experience Christ's power in my life. And then he ends like this, and he says, that is why, for Christ's sake, not for Paul's sake, not for my sake, not for my friend's sake, but he says, hey, for Christ's sake. In other words, for the purpose of Jesus, he says, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. This is so hard to understand and comprehend. That Paul actually, he gets this thorn in his flesh. He gets this middle season. And this is a permanent thing that God actually gifts him with. And that God is saying to him, I'm not going to take it away. But know that during this season, during this weakness, during this difficult time, all right, my grace is sufficient for you. And if you really want to experience my power, it's only when you embrace your weakness. It's only when you realize that you're only human and that I'm God. During these past couple of weeks, as I've read over this verse, and one of my friends phoned me during these past few weeks, and he shared with me this verse, and he said, hey Wes, I just want you to know that God's grace is sufficient. In a season where I'm like, just got so many emotions going through me, so much anger, so much joy even. It's so messy. There's so many different thoughts that I'm feeling, and knowing that, I've lost my dad and he's passed away. And now when I get this verse, my friend shares, and he says, hey, my grace is sufficient for you, Wes. Like, know that it's in your weakness, in your middle season, in your thorn, that if you can just embrace that, like Paul just accepts it, and he says, you know what? I'm not going to hide this anymore. This is a struggle. This is my weakness. I'm not going to be embarrassed about this. I'm actually going to boast about this, because this is where I experience God's grace. This is where I experience God's power. Some of us today are pleading, and we're praying, and we're asking God to remove this thorn in the flesh. And I think God is saying, no, I'm not going to remove it. Some of us are thinking that this is just a season, but actually this could be a lifetime. This could be something permanently that we have to endure. And the best way that we can endure it is if we're willing to just embrace our weakness. If we're willing to actually embrace our inability, because it's when we embrace our inability, sort of like as a condition or a prerequisite, that is when God's power comes through. As we end today, I want to encourage each and every one of us, as we see our middle season, or as we see that thorn in the flesh, I pray that we can also look at it how Paul looked at it, and he said, hey, in order to, I was given this gift. And now, hey, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. And that is why, for Christ's sake now, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, that is when I am truly strong. We're going to end today with a song by Reese and Grace, and they're going to sing this song called Even When It Hurts. And I just want to pray that as you listen to the lyrics, as you hear these words, and maybe as you even sing along, that it will be your prayer today, whatever your thorn in your flesh is, that you will just release that and embrace that to God and say, hey God, I'm weak, yeah, and I want to be strong. So God, I'm just surrendering this to you. Even when it hurts, I'm going to praise you.
Good morning, guys. My name's Reese, and this is Grace, and today we're going to be singing a song for you. Hope you can connect with it, and get something out of it this morning.
So the song that we've chosen is called Even When It Hurts. And I know there's a lot of fear and anxiety and uncertainty around COVID, but I just want to remind you to fix your eyes on Jesus. And it says in the Bible that He is our rock and our foundation, and He is the still in the storm. And so as we sing this song, just remember that.
God, thank you that even when it does hurt, we can still praise you. And we thank you that you are our strength, even when we're feeling weak in our middle times. And so this week we ask that you be with us, that you give us your strength and help others to be able to see you through the way that we handle our middle season as well. Amen. Hey guys, we just want to thank you for joining us, and if something stood out to you about this message and you want to connect with us, we would love to hear from you. So we're actually going to have some Zoom discussion groups straight after this, and you can join us. Our Zoom links are on our website as well as here. You'll be able to check them out. Come and continue the conversation with us because we're better together, and yeah, there's lots to discuss, so we can't wait to hear from you. Also, we would love to see you during the week. So even though we're in lockdown and we're at home, we still have our life groups. So you can join us on Tuesday night for life groups. Fuel Youth Group is happening this Friday night, and there's different ways you can connect. So you can go to our website and you can see how you can get in touch with us. One of the ways is on social media, or send us an email at info.gracegate.org and .nz, and you'll be able to get in contact with us. And if you have any needs at this time, if there's any way we can help you, if you just want to talk to someone, have someone pray for you, then definitely get in touch with us. We would love to hear from you. Otherwise, we're looking forward to seeing you throughout the rest of the week online. See ya.